Hi everybody, it's me, Whitney. I am back for my second video for my new booktube channel called All the Shelves, and today I'm going to be reviewing Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. Can you see? This book is very popular right now. President Obama just came out and said that it was his favorite book of the year. I think in a People interview, Amazon just said that it was their #1 book of 2015. It was shortlisted for the National Book Award. This is a huge book, and I am with all of those other people. I thought it was just like totally wonderful. To begin, I'm going to give a little bit of a plot description. It's about a married couple. The man's name is Lancelot. He goes by Lotto for short, and the woman's name is Mathilde, and they kind of have this fairy tale seeming marriage at the beginning of the book. But the first half of the book is from Lotto's perspective, so you immediately begin to kind of question the supremacy and the trustworthiness of that perspective, and a lot of people have compared this book to Gone Girl because in the second half of the book we get Mathilde's perspective. Lotto is a struggling actor when he meets Mathilde, but he's a beloved struggling actor. I mean, everybody talks about how wonderful he is and how crazy it is that he hasn't gotten a chance for the stage. And he keeps struggling, and he and Mathilde have this whirlwind marriage where like after 2 weeks or something they get married. She works to support him through all of his struggling years until one night he gets really drunk and he writes a play in the middle of the night, and they wake up and it's just, you know, an amazing play, and he starts his career as a very successful playwright. So the first half of the book details kind of how that career is going, and then the second half of the book is Mathilde's perspective on their life together. The second half gets exciting, so I don't want to give anything away about what happens there, but I do want to talk a little bit about the structure of the book, which I thought was the most brilliant part of it. People have been comparing it to Gone Girl, as I said, I think, and kind of the result of that has been that people go into the book expecting it to be fairly straightforward and kind of thriller-like. I have to be honest, I was not a big fan of Gone Girl, the book. I thought the movie was excellent, the Fincher movie, and you know, the soundtrack and the acting and the choice of Ben Affleck for the character. I mean, it was wonderful. But I wasn't a huge fan of the prose style of the book. I thought it was pretty straightforward. This one really plays with language in a way that kind of upset people that were expecting a more straightforward thriller. I mean, the language in this is just beautiful and it's intricate, and I had to look up a lot of words to figure out exactly what she was saying, and it always turned out that the word was the perfect word. And I don't even know how she kind of knows all of these words. Her vocabulary is extensive and amazing. I'm very jealous. Anyway, the language is beautiful. The structure, you know, the first half is called Fates and the second half is called Furies. And the Fates portion of the novel proceeds fairly linearly. We kind of have Lotto's birth, his childhood, and then up through to, you know, his marriage through to Mathilde and beyond. It moves, you know, plot point by plot point. So it has this kind of fateful feel, like everything that happens to him was just meant to happen. Whereas the Fury section of it, which again is Mathilde's perspective, is all over the place, completely nonlinear. You know, it moves back and forth in time. There's even varying perspectives occasionally. You know, she's angry, and then she's happy, and then she's calm, and then she's flustered, and you never quite know exactly who she's going to be from one moment to the other. And you know, not only does that make the book really fun to read, it kind of points out the inconsistencies in a marriage. I feel like when you're in a very successful marriage, a very happy marriage, you kind of feel like you know that other person as well as you know yourself, right? Like you think that you know everything that's going on in their head. But when you step back for a second and you kind of try to see it from an objective perspective, you realize you don't know that person at all. Anything could be going on in there. They could be hiding anything from you, and you know, performing in a certain way. And that's not always a bad thing. That's probably a good thing. You don't want to know everything that's in your partner's head, right? But to like pull that out and make that explicit is very uncomfortable. I'm not going to say that I related to these characters though. That portion sounds like I did, and I do relate to how the relationship proceeds, I guess, to an extent, but the other problem that negative reviewers have occasionally had with this novel is that both of these characters are very unlikable. That's a term we hear thrown around a lot in popular criticism, as though that's a reason to hate a book. I actually really love reading books with unlikable characters, because in real life I would never hang out with unlikable people, right? So to read about unlikable characters, I get to get inside their minds and experience what they experience without ever having to interact with them. And I think it helps us form empathy, even when people are unlikable, to kind of understand where their choices come from. The other thing I really loved about this book is that I thought it was a very feminist novel. Maybe you can tell by the way I dress and my glasses, I am a feminist. Even just the structure of it, which I've talked about so far, that kind of like unsuturing out of time that the female perspective has to experience in order to kind of placate the male experience, that is a very feminist perspective. The book is kind of about how patriarchy and gender roles hurt the relationships between the genders, and they hurt both genders in unique ways. Feminism is not just for women, and Mathilde here doesn't just benefit from feminism, it's obviously Lancelot that also suffers from being stuck in the patriarchy. Mathilde is not what I would necessarily call a great feminist character. I wouldn't say that she is, what they call a strong female character, and I think that that's probably apparent just by the structure, that you would have to have a second half where she is expressing her opinions. But I think that she does show in the way that she acts, the way that gender roles can hurt both sides of the spectrum. Lotto spends the entire first half of the novel thinking that she is an ideal woman, and you can imagine all of the ways that somebody would be conceived of as an ideal woman. This book is contemporary and it still counts. She's making like bread for guests and brownies, and she's passing out drinks, and she's doing the cleaning, and she's paying the bills, she's doing all the necessary domestic duties that Lotto does, just completely expects her to do. He doesn't necessarily take her for granted. He acknowledges how wonderful his wife is, but in a way that is like really superficial and not satisfying at all, both to Mathilde but also to the readers, I hope. Just to give you a feel for what kind of amazing language Lauren Groff provides for us and how her choice of words is always just so perfect, I have a couple of examples here. Here's a passage where it says, "She could do nothing. Her whole body had turned inward. Mathilde had become a fist." Just that image of like a body sort of swallowing itself and becoming like completely inaccessible in a fist. I've heard it kind of before, but not in that language. It's wonderful. And here's another one that I thought was just incredible. It says, "Something hot in her began to cool, and in cooling began to anneal." So I had to look up that term, anneal. It's a biochemical term that means when you heat up metal or glass and then you let it cool down really slowly so that any kind of weaknesses in the substance harden and toughen up. How amazing to even know that word and then to use it so perfectly. Something hot in her began to cool, and in cooling began to anneal. Somebody's anger making them harder and harder, perhaps bringing back that fist metaphor. Okay, so that's my review of Lauren Groff's Fates and Furies. I would encourage everybody to read this, especially those who are interested in these kind of disturbing, domestic, literary type fiction, especially those that are interested in the ways that language can describe interiority in these precise and perfect ways. I loved Fates and Furies. Okay, that's all for me. I'm Whitney at All the Shelves. If you've read Fates and Furies and you want to talk to me about it, I would love to hear your opinion. So please just leave me a comment and we can have a conversation about it.